Today, we are talking about if the Cubs are serious about winning, they will ... Or unlike Jeff Foxworthy, we're not talking about if you're a redneck. If you might be a redneck if, right? We're talking about the Cubs might win if they do these things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. The very first one that I've got for you here is the Cubs are serious about winning here in 2024. They will surpass the luxury tax threshold of $237 million. Last check, they were a few million away from that. But we're talking about a team right now that, I don't like Pacoda's rankings. I think they're always extremely conservative. Like, even though you look at the Braves and they say that the Braves are going to win 100, I still think that's conservative. I think the Braves are at 105 wins with everything they've got going. I think the Cubs are at least at 84 wins right now. Pacoda says 80 to 81. You add one arm in the bullpen, one starter, or one bat that is a 2 to 3 WAR type of player. Yeah, that's going to surpass the luxury threshold there. But now you're looking at almost a surefire division winner here in 2024. I don't think that has to happen before the season. I'm not saying that they have to surpass that before the season starts. They do need to, at some point during 2024, surpass that. And I would love to see them do that earlier than later, because if it's earlier, that means that they are competing for that division and they're probably making moves to make sure that they win the division. Rich says, nice hat. Where'd you get that? You know exactly where I got that, Rich. That was at spring training, brother. Good seeing you out there. How much money do we have to go over till the threshold? Again, I don't know the exact numbers. And by the way, I always thought that like the payroll was very straightforward, but it's not. There's a lot of contingencies that are in there. And at last look, based on some kind of projections, it looks like they're probably either right there or maybe about 6 to 7 million away from it. So good question from Goofy Goober. I like that name. So somewhere in that maybe $0 to like $7 million is kind of where they're at there. I think the Cubs need to get Jordan Montgomery, says Stephen Dunn. Man, you're a few ahead of me here. So that's number one. Number two, the Cubs are serious about winning. If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will give Christopher Morel, if healthy, at least 500 official at-bats. Not 500 plate appearances, 500 at-bats. Guys, last year in 388 official at-bats, Christopher Morel hit 26 home runs. If he has 500 official at-bats, that comes out to about 33 to 34 home runs. But I want at least 500. I'm talking 550, which puts you closer to about 38 home runs for the year, which is why in my video last week, I projected Christopher Morel at 38 home runs and leading the team in home runs. If the Cubs are serious about winning this year, they will give him that 500 at bats, which probably comes out to, 550 plate appearances, somewhere in that neighborhood. He didn't get called up till mid-May last year. Obviously, he's making this team. Craig Counsell wants him in the lineup, but do they start doing the whole thing like last year where like, oh, he's struggling, we're going to bench him for a few games and let him get his head right? I think there's times when you have to do that, but also he's a young player and he's just got to figure it out. You just got to like let him work through those things. And if you bring him out, take him back in, all these things, it throws off his development, in my opinion. I'm not a coach, I'm not a manager, but those are the things I think about is when you think of Anthony Rizzo, he just had to figure it out in his first year. And he didn't. It took a year or two for him to be able to figure it out. Christopher Morel needs to be able to work through the pain. There's going to be pain when it comes to being a rookie or a first, second, third year player. Christopher Morel is going into year 3. It's time for him to get that 500 at bats. If he doesn't, the Cubs are not serious about winning in 2024. Stephen Dunn says Morel could be a 40 home run hitter one day. I truly believe it. I think that can happen this year. What do you guys think? Let's put it in the comments. How many home runs, if Christopher Morel gets 500 at bats, 500 at bats, last year he got 388. How many home runs does he hit with 500 official at bats? My guess, again, is somewhere in that 34 to 38 range. That's where I've got him this year. Rob says 35. I like that. Rich says that's what they did with Seiya last year. And he responded, well, yeah. And that's the important thing there, Rich, right? They only did it once, right? They didn't sit him multiple times when he was struggling multiple times. And if they did, it was for one game, but they put him in that like 5 games where they were like, we're just not going to play you. And we want you to remember what it's like to just have fun in the dugout, right? You can do that with any player throughout the season, but don't do it to Morel 4, 5, 6 times like they did last year. Goofy Goober says 34. What other numbers you guys think he's going to put up for home runs? I want to hear. Kyle Lawson, good name, Kyle. If we are in contention in August, what additions would you like to see? Once again, great hat. Thank you. Man, I mean, we could play that game. I don't want to play that game for this particular live because there's just there's so much that we don't know. I am going to make a few kind of comments on who I would like to see added at the trade deadline. If the Mariners are struggling, that's a team that I don't think is going to be doing very well this year based on all their moves from the offseason. But it really depends on where teams are at, right? Like, heck, the Cardinals could have another downfall, and then before you know it, Steven Matz is on the trading block, but we don't know right now. So I can't play that game right now, but that might be an entire episode on its own. That's a good question, Kyle. Rob says, hi all, go Cubs. I hope they have a plan to replace Tyone. I have zero faith. He is going to be helpful this year. I have faith. You got to look at the second half numbers there, Rob. You got to look at the second half numbers. They were solid. They were competitive even with Justin Steele's numbers in the second half. So I got faith. The lower back thing is an issue though. All right. Here we go. I like this. Steven says, prediction, Guardians struggle at the deadline and send Emmanuel Clase to the Cubs for an outfield prospect and maybe low-tier prospect as well. I like that. All right. Number 3, the Cubs are serious. If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will start Patrick Wisdom 50 games or less. This is a guy that we were really high on in 2021, came out really, I think he led the team in home runs that year. 2022 fell off a little bit. Defensively wasn't great. Last year, kind of the same thing. He came out like a house on fire. We were like, oh my gosh, why did the Cardinals get rid of this guy? He's our next star. And then he just kind of hit hard times. I like Patrick Wisdom. I think he serves a great purpose on the 2024 Chicago Cubs. I don't want them trading him. I don't want them releasing him. I think he's a cheap option to have a impact bat. You remember that home run in September against the Rockies? Cubs were in the middle of a tough stretch. They needed a big hit, and they bring in a lefty reliever who's throwing nothing but pus up there, and they brought Patrick Wisdom up off the bench, and it was like everyone in the stadium and watching just knew, like, this is the guy that Wisdom hits home runs off of, and he did it. Cubs win that game by a run or two, and it was such an uplifting moment. I think that's the type of role Patrick Wisdom has to keep playing on this team. But the 947 career fielding percentage, last year 927 at third base, is not going to cut it. You know, that if you're Christopher Morel, right, we can live with like the 947 fielding percentage. Basically, guys, if you're not doing the math, that's an error about every 20 opportunities. I'm cool with that with Christopher Morel. His bat's a little bit more productive, reliable, strikes out just about the same amount, but is going to hit for a higher average, going to hit for a higher OPS. He's going to walk a little bit more often, probably. Those are the things that Morel brings to the plate that offsets that bad feeling. Patrick Wisdom, it's home run or strikeout. Now, I will say at spring training, he did look like he's trying to work on becoming more of a complete hitter. He was hitting line drives to the opposite field. That is something we're not used to seeing, but I still don't think that if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, that he plays more than 50 games as a starter. Come off the bench every game. I don't care, but that's where I see the role. Alex says, I hope Seiya has a monster year. Absolutely. The NL Central is really hard to predict. Yeah, it is. It is. And Steven also says, I see P. Wizzy getting moved to a split base DH with Canario or giving Bush a rest periodically. That's my dream scenario. Yeah, and that's fine. But if he's starting at DH, I'm even okay with that. But I really think his biggest asset to this team is going to be a late inning off the bench, big hit in a tight game kind of situation. That's where I want to see him the most. Number 4, if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will give Michael Busch at least 2 months, aka 50 games, to prove that he is a Major League Baseball player. I don't want the same Matt Mervis treatment. I don't want to see him get 99 plate appearances and then the organization gives up on him. And that's kind of what it feels like right now. Rich, you and I were at spring training, and we didn't see Matt Mervis participating much with the Major League Ball Club. He was at the minors fields most of the time. Meanwhile, Michael Busch, PCA, Canario, they're all working out with the Major League team. It felt like, based on where he was being positioned at spring training, Matt Mervis is not really an option right now. And then you add in Dom Smith and Garrett Cooper getting added to this team, and it's more obstacles for a guy like Matt Mervis to prove himself again. I don't want Michael Busch getting that same treatment. This is a guy who was in last year top 50. Now he's number 51, I believe, on MLB.com's top 100 prospects list. This is a guy that at the age of 26 should have been a starting first baseman or third baseman for about 28 other ball clubs. But because he was with the Dodgers, and you got Max Muncy and Freddie Freeman on the infield, and then, of course, second base, you got Mookie. You've got a few different options there. He just hasn't gotten his shot. Give him his shot. Give him a real shot. 50 games. If you don't like the defense, oh well, put him at DH. If Morel is at that point too, where he's having to get DH spots because we've given up on him at third base, or if Canario is taking off as a DH as well, okay, fine. Put Busch in against righties and put Canario or Morel in against lefties. All right. There is a need to see a prospect through. Let's see a guy through at first base. Since Rizzo, there just hasn't been a guy, and it's been a very short leash. And so for me, I want to see if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they're going to give Michael Busch at least 50 games to prove himself, not 99 plate appearances. Let's see, looking at the comments here, I think they were serious about winning. They would have a short leash on Busch. So I'm not sure he will have a 2-month minimum. It would be more like a max. The problem with that, Goofy Goober, I love that name. The problem with that is, what are the other options? The other options are old guys or Matt Mervis, who I would love to see another shot again, but they're going to do the same thing with Matt Mervis. They're not going to give anyone any options. Or here's the other thought. If PCA gets called up and then Bellinger moves over to first, and now we're trying to say, oh, but we really want Busch to work out. Now I'm on board with you. Now it's like, no, just get Busch out of here and put Bellinger at first. That's the long-term solution, not just for this year, for years to come. Go for it, right? But if PCA doesn't get called up, then what are our options at first base? It's Patrick Wisdom. I'd rather see Michael Busch just work through it. Guys, Anthony Rizzo sucked in his first year. He was not good. What if the Cubs would have given up on Anthony Rizzo after year one? Now, Anthony Rizzo brought more value on defense as well, so we have to keep that in mind. He wasn't a liability in the field. Matt Mervis and Michael Busch are a little bit more of a liability at first base, so for that reason, there might be a shorter leash, but just for that reason. But I want to see them give a guy a shot at first base without the short leash, and I think if they do, they're going to learn a lot, not just for this year, but for the long haul as well. Number 5, if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will put Luke Little on the opening day roster. Can I get an amen? Good Lord. Luke Little is just like giving all of us reasons to only keep him, not to get rid of him. He hasn't given us one reason to say, nope, can't hack it. No runs allowed in 6 2/3 innings last year on the Major League Ball Club. 12 strikeouts in 6 2/3 innings. No runs allowed this spring. I think it's now been 5 outings. And the Cubs need a power lefty. We didn't have a lefty last year. The only lefty was Drew Smyly, and then when they called up Luke Little. And then he didn't get any high leverage innings. I couldn't believe it. Every single game in September was a nail biter. And we were still throwing guys out there that were hurt. Mark Leiter Jr., He was fatigued and he's still getting thrown out there. You had Drew Smyly in major situations, and he actually rose to the occasion a little bit, but he's not a guy that comes in and out of the bullpen that scares me. Luke Little scares the crap out of me if I'm in that batter's box. And seeing him pitch live as well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I saw him strike out Nick Madrigal at spring training. Nick looked like it was like a Javi Baez swing. The ball was so far in the dirt and his bat was so far away from hitting that ball. I was like, did Nick Madrigal just channel Javi Baez there for a second? No, Luke Little just has that nasty of stuff. And if the Cubs are serious about winning in 24, they're going to start with Luke Little and see him through that lineup, through that roster the entire time this season. +1 for Big Little, says Rob German. Amen, says Rich. Luke has earned the spot. CJ Edwards, yeah, but oh man, now you're getting me going, Steven, because I want that too, but I'm just like, where does he go? There's this bullpen is loaded. The problem is it's not loaded with like the dominant guys. It's loaded with just like really good guys, right? You got the Wisniewskis, you've got the Leiter Juniors, you've got, I think Merriweather is really good, so I'm not going to put him in that category. But you got the Daniel Palencias. You got these guys that you're like, oh, they're good. And CJ Edwards kind of gets put into that same category. So I want to see him too, but he's not on the 40-man roster, and I don't see who gets kicked off of the 40-man roster at this point for him. But I would like to see that. I really would. I was listening to the CHGO podcast the other day, and Brennan and Corey were talking about like, imagine if CJ Edwards does get the last out of the World Series. He comes back on the Cubs. He gets the last out of the World Series. I got chills listening to that. That was awesome. Absolute horse, says Kyle. Steven says the bullpen should look like Quast, Little, Palencia, Merriweather, CJ Edwards, Neris, Alzolay, Leiter Jr. Yeah, I mean, you know, the guys that come to mind that are being left off of that, Wisniewski, Assad. You can't, like, maybe on opening day, because Assad's probably going to be a starter, you might be able to say that, but how do you leave Assad out of that bullpen, right? Who else? Almonte, they traded for Almonte. I don't know if he's part of the equation, but you know, the dude has put up a few really good years. There will be a spot open on the 40-man. Yes. Kudos to you, Rich. There is going to be a spot open. So we'll see who gets added. That's going to be an interesting one. Put in the comments who you think might be added to the 40-man roster once Caleb Killian gets removed by being put on the 60-day IL. All right, if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, number 6, make Jordan Wicks the 5th starter. Name it now. The numbers are stupid. This dude is it's kind of the same category as Luke Little. Like, give me one good reason why Jordan Wicks shouldn't be the 5th starter. Give me one good reason why Luke Little shouldn't be on the opening day roster. You can't do it. You can't. You literally cannot do it. There's every single reason for both of these guys to be in, especially Jordan Wicks. Check these numbers, just so you know. Like, you look at his numbers from last year, 4.41 ERA, 7 starts. Okay, serviceable. If you take out the final game, why would I take out the final game? Because it was September 30th. The Cubs have already been eliminated from the playoffs, or at least mentally were eliminated from the playoffs. I don't know which day it actually happened. And he goes out there and he's like, I gotta pitch this game, you know, when we're all down, when we're all like, we just missed out on the playoffs. Take that game out, because he went an inning and 2/3, gave up 6 runs. It was his only bad start of the 7 starts that he made. It's a 3 ERA, 3.00 ERA in 33 innings if you take that out. All right, that's solid. Then how about this spring? A 1.46 ERA. And what is that? Like, I don't even have it in front of me. I think he's already thrown 13 innings. It's not like he's done that in 5 innings. He's done that in 13, 14 innings. He's been solid. And I will tell you, when I saw him in person as well at spring training, the swings he was getting on his changeup were just, I mean, silly. Probably the closest thing to that ghost fork that everyone talks about with Kodai Senga. Jordan Wicks not only will be the 5th starter, but I think by the end of the 2024 season, he's going to be probably one of the top 3 most reliable starters on the team. Let's see. Wicks could be the 4th starter depending on who we replace Taillon with. Absolutely, Rob. I'm speaking more in generalities of who's probably going to get the most starts this year. That's a no-brainer. Absolutely. He's got it. He also has the best specs in the organization, says Kyle Lawson. Absolutely. And Steven, in 5 innings this spring, Quas has 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, 0 runs given up. If you take out his one bad outing when Ross was pitching him, his arm fell off. It was stellar. Yeah. So we're talking about Quas a little bit in the comments here. I think Quas is definitely making this opening day roster for sure. And Steven also says, yes, absolutely. Wicks needs to be announced as a starter. He can be a fantastic rotation arm. Absolutely. And lefties, how about that? Steele, Wicks, Imanaga. I like lefties now dominating this rotation. That to me is pretty fun. All right. If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, number 7 out of 12, it is do not let Drew Smyly make more than 5 starts this season. All right. I didn't go over the numbers, but I'll go over them now. Smyly last year as a starter, just it wasn't good. Remember, he had that one game that he took like the perfect game into the 8th inning, and that was great. But then it was kind of all downhill after that. 5.62 ERA as a starter. In relief, Drew Smyly was actually a major weapon out of the bullpen last year, low key. I think we all kind of like spaced out on Drew Smyly. We were all just like, put him in the bullpen. We don't want to think about him anymore. Well, in that effort of not thinking about him anymore, he had a 2.51 ERA out of the bullpen, including in 15 2/3 innings in September. Smyly had a 1.15 ERA out of the bullpen. All right. So keep him there. He's got that thing figured out. Stop trying to figure him out as a starter. We got other options. I was talking about this on Twitter when Tyone went down. A lot of people were like, oh, does this give Smyly an opportunity? No, it gives Assad an opportunity. Assad is the guy that's going to fill in for Tyone. And if it's anyone else, if it's Smyly, I'm going to be upset. But if it's anyone else, my question is why? Because Assad is the dude to get those spot starts when someone goes down, when Imanaga needs another day off, when, you've got a doubleheader and 7 games being played in 6 days. Assad is that guy, not Smyly. Keep Smyly in the bullpen. Maybe if you do that, he finds some revitalization in his career. He finds a purpose on this team. He's a weapon, but you keep trying to do this back and forth thing with Smyly. I don't think it's going to go well for him or for the organization. Okay. So don't even, honestly, I say less than 5 starts. I don't want to see Smyly start once this year just because of how much success he had out of the bullpen. And Sean Hendrickson says, go get Monty. Just do it. Yes. We all want Jordan Montgomery. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. Smyly makes me nervous, says Rob. He likes to bounce his curveballs off the dirt in front of home plate. Yeah, and now he's got that like splitter thing that he's working on, and it keeps sailing on him. It doesn't look like he has a good feel for it. I wonder if Bodie had played well enough this season for another team to want to give him another shot at the majors. Man, David Bodie deserves that. I really want to see someone give him a shot. I just don't see how it's the Cubs, unfortunately, at this point. But great point, Steven. All right. Number 8, if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will trade for a closer during the season. Steven, you took the words out of my mouth earlier, man. Emmanuel Clase, right? I think what ends up happening and why they didn't get another guy, first of all, they got Neris, right? So Neris could potentially be a spot closer if Alzolay has worked 3 days in a row, is dealing with fatigue. They want to preserve him a little bit. Neris or Merriweather could be those guys, which is really exciting because last year we went in thinking, who's the closer? Is it really Michael Fulmer? We don't really know enough about the guy. This year we're like, hey, Neris could be the closer. Alzolay could be the closer. Merriweather could be the closer. That's exciting, right? We've got options now. However, it goes back to what I said earlier. This bullpen is full of good options, but we need a couple great options. I think depending on how this season plays out, 2 of the 3, Alzolay, Merriweather, and Neris are going to be great options. I know, we hope all 3 of them have great seasons, but at least 2 of those 3. I think Luke Little could potentially be a great option, but there's question marks around all 4 of those if we're being completely honest. Alzolay, it was his first year as a closer, did great. Merriweather, first good season in the major leagues. Luke Little, he's a rookie. Neris, he's getting older, right? There's questions around all 4 of those guys. So go get someone that we know is reliable. Now, you said Clase. I also would love Clase. However, he's coming off of a pretty piss poor season in terms of saves converted. His ERA almost doubled in 1 year. Still was pretty serviceable in the low 3s, if I recall. I would love to see someone get added. Again, we could play the game of like who that's going to be, but that's not the point of this video. I just want to see them go get a high leverage reliever. It doesn't even have to be a closer, a high leverage reliever at some point this season on top of what they already have in the organization. If they're serious, I think we're going to see that probably even before the trade deadline if they're competing for the organization. We got a few people in here. If you haven't hit that like button, make sure you do. If you are not subscribed to us, make sure that you are. I appreciate all of you being here. Make sure you're commenting as well. I'm reading all the comments. If you're watching this on replay later, go ahead and keep on commenting because I'll come back and I will definitely read off the comments. So we're going over just a little reset. We're going over if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024. Here's the things they will do. We've already, just a recap. Number 1 was surpass the luxury tax. Number 2 was give Christopher Morel, if healthy, 500 plus at bats. Number 3, start Patrick Wisdom less than 50 games this year. Number 4 was give Michael Busch at least 2 months to develop and prove himself. Number 5, put Luke Little on the opening day roster. Make Jordan Wicks, number 6, the 5th starter. Number 7, do not let Drew Smyly get 5 starts this year. And number 8 was trade for a closer during the season. We're coming down the stretch. If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, number 9, trade for another ace or number 2 starter. Okay. Now, everyone in their mind right now has got Cade Horton starting on the mound at Wrigley in May or June, coming in, being that ace, being that savior, and we're all really good at making these prospect saviors, right? Matt Shaw, he should play at third base. He's the third baseman of the future. Cade Horton, he's the next Mark Prior, but healthy, right? We got guys like PCA that are going to be better than Bellinger in center and better than Dexter Fowler and better than all these guys, right? We put all this pressure on these rookies. We did the same thing to Matt Mervis last year. Who's talking about Matt Mervis anymore, right? My point is here, don't wait around for Cade Horton to be the savior. Don't wait for Ben Brown to come up and maybe start getting starts. I think Ben Brown's going to get the Justin Steele treatment. He's probably going to start as a reliever and then maybe get worked into the starter role in year 2. So we've already talked about it. Jordan Montgomery, right? He's out there. Some guys that haven't been talked about that are maybe more of the number 2 fits. Man, there's just not many out there. You could argue that Michael Lorenzen or Mike Clevenger are like a number 2 starter, but they would have to pull a rabbit out of their hat for that one. Mike Clevenger hasn't had a really good season in a bit. Michael Lorenzen threw a no-hitter last year, but you know, the everyday version of him is probably number 3 starter at best. So it's probably going to come as a trade. And that's why I say trade. Because again, I don't see, I'm sorry, not to be negative. I just don't see Tom opening the checkbook for Jordan Montgomery before the season starts. I just don't see it. I see if they're going to go over the luxury tax threshold, it will be during season because of how they're performing. Tom is not a Steve Cohen who's just going to be like, let's throw everything. Let's throw money at the situation and that'll make us good. And then he regrets it later. He's calculated, which, you know, say what you want about that. It's honestly smart business. It's not smart. It's not great for fans, but it can be smart business when you're going one step at a time there. What was I looking for here? There are 2 names. I've got them in my notes here. I really hope the Mariners are sellers at the deadline and George Kirby or Logan Gilbert are available. Both of them pitched 190.2 innings, 2/3, 190 and 2/3 innings last year. They're young. They're going to be expensive in terms of prospects and probably major league ready talent. But if they are sellers at the All-Star break-ish, there's your number one or number two. A lot of people are actually expecting George Kirby to be a potential ace moving forward and a Cy Young candidate. So wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be great? We can talk about that all day long. But that's to me, like, this rotation does not scare me in the playoffs. Who was it earlier? I think it was Steven said, like, Horton, Steele, and Imanaga in the playoffs. We only have one certainty in that. We know Justin Steele is a stud. Okay. But in terms of being an ace as well, he's the horse, but he also, he threw 175, 180 innings last year. That to me, along with a 3 ERA, that's kind of what I want out of my 2 starter. When I talk about an ace, I want 2.5 ERA. I want 33 starts. I want 200 innings. I want a strikeout per inning at least, right? And we're not going to get that in Imanaga. Everyone is projected 140 to 150 innings this year. I'm projecting a high 3 ERA because he's going to have to adjust. He's going to have to learn how to use his pitches a little bit better. Cade Horton could be that guy. He could be super scary in the playoffs. But again, there's so many question marks. What's he going to look like in the majors compared to what he's done so far in the minors? There's so many question marks with that. But you go get a George Kirby or a Logan Gilbert, right? A little bit more established, still young. Ooh, I like that. I'm starting to get excited just talking about that. All right. Is it wrong to prey on the Mariners' downfall? It's not. Yeah, Bryce Miller too. I mean, they got some exciting stuff going on, but like, why did the Mariners not go all in this offseason? That's a whole other conversation. But God, yeah, Steven, I know if Killian hadn't gotten hurt, I would have. Let's not go down that road right now. I'm so bummed about that. Looking at the road. I keep saying rotation. It's the comments. Sean says, I do think Wesneski has a small shot at the fill-in rotation role if Taillon isn't starting in the first few weeks. I want to put the best of either Assad versus Wesneski to get the job. The only problem is that Assad, 2 years in a row, has proven that he can handle the starter position. He actually has a better ERA as a starter than a reliever. And that's coming from a guy with a career ERA. I think it's like 305. That's impressive, right? Like I'm all for Javier Assad as long as he's got the ball in his hand. I don't care where it is, reliever or starter. As long as he's got the ball in his hands, I trust the guy. Whereas Wesneski, I'm like, I want you as a reliever. I want you coming in throwing 98 with that dirty sweeper against righties. He has developed a couple other pitches, and he looks like he's working on a few things to get lefties out. The other day, he looked really good against lefties, but it's spring training, so we don't know. So I really do like Wesneski, especially, again, when we talk about the Justin Steele treatment. Maybe Wesneski figures things out as a reliever, doesn't put so much pressure on himself, can get into that groove of being a great reliever, and then eventually translate that into being a starter. I just don't think he's quite there yet. I think he has to prove a lot still in the reliever role. So that's where I'm at on number 9. Number 10, if the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will bring PCA up if he's hitting over 280 after 100 at-bats at Iowa. Guys, Pete Crow Armstrong will be a 3 to 4 WAR player, significant impact on a team that is right now around, depending on which projections you look at, between 80 to 84 wins. A 3 to 4 WAR player if he's only hitting 240 at the major leagues. I believe if he has a serviceable bat, we're talking like, let's just say he gets 350 official plate appearances, official at bats this year. 240, 10 home runs, OPS of like 730. Serviceable. He to me is a 3 to 4 WAR player with that glove. That's how much I think PCA makes a difference on this team. I don't want us getting the PCA version that came up in September last year, where every at bat he's chasing everything, swinging through fastballs down the middle. I don't want that, but I also don't need him to come up and light the world on fire and look like Nico Horner right out of the gate, like he's going to be a 300 hitter. I just want a serviceable bat tracking down every freaking fly ball in center field, saving run after run after run, and getting on base as much as he can, wreaking havoc on the base paths. And of course, that's going to come with some strikeouts. That's going to come with a little bit of, every once in a while he's going to look a little bit lost at the plate, but that's not why I want him up. I want him up because of the job he can do in center field. What do you think? Are you cool with if he's hitting 280 after 100 bats in Iowa? Are you like, yeah, just bring him up. Let's go. Or do you need to see a little bit more? Do you want to see 200 bats? Do you want to see a 320 average? What do you want to see? Put it in the comments. Looks like we don't have any comments about, oh, wait, there we go. I just scroll down a little bit. Dear baseball gods, please send Corbin Burnes to the Cubs. Yeah, that's good. That's good, Steven. Okay. No one's talking about PCA in the comments yet, but I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you like that as a barometer for PCA? Let me know in the comments. All right, number 11. If the Cubs are going to be serious about winning in 2024, they will move Cody Bellinger to first base. And it's just a chain effect, a chain reaction of PCA coming up. That's all that is. Cody Bellinger moves to first base because PCA is going to center field. And now, instead of a Gold Glove potential center fielder, Cody Bellinger, we now have a Gold Glove potential first baseman and a Gold Glove potential center fielder, PCA. Can we count the gold on this team if that happens? Again, I'm getting all antsy about this. This is exciting. Ian Happen left. I don't think he wins a Gold Glove this year. That was one of my predictions when I released that video last week. But he's still he's got 2 Gold Gloves to his name. Dansby Swanson at short, Gold Glove. Nico Horner at second, Gold Glove. I think Yan Gomes has finished like in second or third as Gold Glove. He's not a Gold Glover right now, but at least last memory served, but he was up there. And then you get Cody Bellinger at first and PCA in center. Whew. If you were to count Seiya Suzuki's Gold Glove in Japan, which I don't because he's actually been pretty rough in the outfield the first couple of years. Now, I mean, so much gold. So much gold. This could be the best defense in the world in the major leagues if you have Cody Bellinger at first and PCA in center. Fully believe that. Fully believe that. Third base still just is the question mark, right? Kyle Lawson says 280 at AAA by May is fine by me. Awesome. Rich says Pete will be fine. Let him find his swing and get hot and bring him up. Absolutely. Steven says PCA for his defense alone is a difference maker. If he's hitting 280, he deserves the call up and should be allowed to develop his bat as long as he's major league average after coming up. Yep. So we're all on the same page there. All on the same page. All right. Number 12, drum roll, please. Drum roll, please. We might even have a bonus. All right. If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, they will trade Miles Mastrobuoni or Nick Madrigal. Guys, I know that like Miles Mastrobuoni, everyone wants him to be like a Ben Zobrist. He can play everywhere. I know he had 16 home runs in the minors a couple of years ago, and you're like, okay, cool. The guy's got a little bit of pop, but he has not shown that in the major league. So he's basically been a left-handed version of Nick Madrigal, who plays multiple infield positions. We have 2 Nick Madrigals on the team right now. That is, in my opinion, 2 too many, but it's at least 1 too many. One of them has to go. We cannot just assume that with Nick Madrigal and Miles Mastrobuoni, this is a playoff team. To me, that's not. Like, think about the benches and the depth in that 2016 team. There was not, Matt Caesar was on that team. That's the only guy that everyone's like, oh my gosh, he was on the World Series team. Everyone else on that bench was fire, right? Like they were getting at bats. Javi Baez, I think, got like only 80 starts or something like that in 2016, which is crazier. I might be mixing that up with 2015, but that's the kind of bench that the Cubs had and needed in order to be able to be that solid. Okay. And now, I'm just saying Nick Madrigal, Miles Mastrobuoni, one of them has to go. One of them has to go. And we've got a bonus, okay? If the Cubs are serious about winning in 2024, the bonus one is do not call up an old guy. Do not call up an old guy. Garrett Cooper, Dom Smith, David Peralta. They're not on the 40-man roster. There's no room for them. Do not call them up. I don't want a whole Trey Mancini and Tucker Barnhart and Eric Hosmer thing again. I don't want to deal with that. We've got too many prospects to rely on the old guys. Now, Dom Smith and David Peralta, they would be classified as an old guy. Garrett Cooper, I wouldn't be so upset just for a spot start every once in a while, but you still have to make room. You have to put him somewhere, and you have to take someone off the 40-man roster. And I just, at this point, I'm like, I would much rather see you call up a prospect. Give Michael Busch more options. Give Matt Mervis another shot. Give, think about all the outfield options we have with Canario and with PCA. There's going to be guys like Kevin Alcantara, Owen Casey. God, like, give them the opportunities, not David Peralta. I get it. You can kind of say, well, they've got the veteran leadership. Well, how much did Eric Hosmer's veteran leadership help the Cubs in 2023? Did it help more than it hurt? I don't think so. No offense to Hosmer. It's just, that's the way it was. What do you guys think? I want to see the comments. Do you want to see any of those old guys called up? I could see Cooper. Yep. So Steven, Cooper's not a far fetch, but again, I still would rather see some of these other guys getting options. I suspect they will try to deal Mervis, as Rich feels like they've given up on him. We'll see. So let's see. I do disagree here. Yeah, Steven, I know you like Mastro. I know you're a big Mastro fan. I do disagree. I would like to keep Mastro because he has 2 months similar to Seiya. His bat was almost an entirely different player, hitting over 300 and 430 slug. And that's fine. Like I said, it doesn't have to be both of them, just one of them. So trade Magical. So we'll appease Steven. Okay. So there was my bonus. Guys, I had a lot of fun doing this. This went a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. But to me, this team is ready to make the playoffs. This team's ready to take the next step. But the front office, Craig Counsell, and that checkbook have to be ready from Tom Ricketts in order to get all 12/13 of these things done here in 2024 to make this team legitimately take the next step, make the playoffs, be a contender, maybe even a World Series contender. There's a lot that could go right to get that team to where we're talking about right now this year. However, at the very least, this is that stepping stone. These things need to happen this year so we can at least have that development for players to where maybe 2025 is the year that the World Series Chicago Cubs are back at it. All right. If you haven't liked the video, like it. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And of course, make sure you go check out everything on our social media at SetupManPod. Would love to see you engaging with me on social media, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks so much, guys. I'm going to go put my arm on ice. We'll see you later, Setup Nation.